This is Chapter 19, Foreseen Panic, Part 1, from a story called The Time-Dilated Generations, by Esteban Gallardo. The Second Great Filter Cataclysm shattered the very foundations of the time-dilated network society. The tragedy of Rigel 1 had been a devastating loss, but at least it had been attributed to the unpredictable nature of planetary colonization, an inevitable miscalculation in humanity's first attempt to thrive beyond Earth. But Negus was different. The second extinction event was not the result of misfortune. It was deliberate. In the final weeks before the colony's last transmission, scattered fragments of data revealed a horrifying truth. The virus that doomed Negus had not been a natural mutation or an environmental consequence of colonization. It had been engineered. Someone had created it. The discovery sent shockwaves through the generational fleet. They searched for answers, launching an exhaustive investigation across every scrap of remaining data. They analyzed transmissions, medical records, and classified reports, but the perpetrator, whoever they were, had left no trace. No message, no manifesto, no claims of responsibility. It was an act of annihilation devoid of ideology, a silent and absolute erasure of an entire civilization. Something had gone horribly wrong. For centuries, the interstellar fleet had operated under a singular principle, humanity's survival above all else. The same unity that had driven them to abandon Earth, to endure the unthinkable isolation of space, and to forge new worlds from the void, was now unraveling under the weight of an unspeakable crime. The notion that one among them, one of their own, could intentionally exterminate a colony was incomprehensible. The very idea of such an atrocity defied the logic of survival, and yet there was no other explanation. For years, Negus's history was dissected with excruciating precision. The conclusions were unanimous. The colony had collapsed under the weight of its own civilization. The economic and political cycles that once served as stabilizers had been pushed beyond their breaking points. Late-stage capitalism, unchecked and unregulated, had spiraled into something worse than even the darkest chapters of Earth's past. The generational fleet's historical archives had recorded the extremes of wealth disparity on Earth's 21st century, but Negus had exceeded even those horrors. Corporations had not merely influenced governments. They were the government. Billionaires had replaced elected officials, and legislative bodies had become hollowed-out relics, maintained only to give the illusion of democracy. With unchecked corporate dominance, the masses had been reduced to a state of perpetual, oppressive desperation. The masses toiled under the rule of an elite who had long ceased to recognize them as human beings. Meanwhile, AI automation replaced nearly all forms of labor, eliminating any hope for economic mobility. Entire generations were born into a world where employment was an impossibility, where survival was dictated by corporate goodwill, or the lack thereof. The fleet's historians, sociologists, and philosophers reached the same grim conclusion. When billions are forced into despair, when they are stripped of their autonomy, of purpose, of dignity, they will either break or fight. And someone, at least, had experienced both. With AI advancements no longer restricted, individuals with the right knowledge and desperation could engineer weapons of unimaginable scale. Someone on Negus, or perhaps an entire faction, had decided that if they could not reclaim their future, then no one would have one at all. The virus had not merely been an act of vengeance. It had been an extinction event by design. The interstellar fleet's response was immediate. Every ship implemented emergency reforms to prevent their societies from following Negus's path. Measures were enforced to ensure that extreme capitalism could not destabilize their fragile civilizations. Every AI development, every financial system, every power structure was scrutinized under the harshest light. Yet, even as they acted, a greater fear loomed over them. This was not just a failure of governance. It was a failure of humanity. For the first time since leaving Earth, an existential question consumed the minds of those still aboard the fleet's vessels. Was survival even possible? Were they doomed no matter what they did? It was a quiet terror, one that seeped into every conversation, every broadcast, every moment of reflection. and for a year that fear remained unchallenged, festering in the depths of their collective consciousness, until someone challenged it. Someone had foreseen the great filters. Someone had predicted everything that had happened, and worse still, she had foreseen what was yet to come. Ellie Anderson had embedded a failsafe into the heart of the interstellar exodus, one that would only activate under the direst of circumstance. She had programmed a message to be released under a single grim condition. If at least 2 generational spaceships had failed catastrophically in their mission, only then, 1 year after the second tragedy, would the truth be revealed. The message contained the final work of Emma Anderson, a woman whose influence on humanity's survival stretched beyond science, beyond governance, into something deeper, something prophetic. But this was no ordinary public broadcast. The video and text were restricted to only 5 individuals on each generational ship, those entrusted with the critical knowledge and authority to make decisions about the future of the networked, time-dilated society. When the notification arrived, they watched it immediately, knowing the sender's name was one etched into human history. Ellie Anderson, the architect beyond the offloading internal mass quantum drive, the very technology that had made interstellar travel possible, had left behind a message for them, a message she had hoped they would never need to see. The video began. A woman with graying auburn hair and tired yet resolute eyes appeared on screen, standing in front of a simple, dimly lit background. She took a deep breath before speaking, as if the weight of her words could barely be contained. "Please, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Ellie Anderson. I was responsible for the construction of the offloading internal mass quantum drive, but I'm not here because of that. I'm here because of a promise I made to my mother, Emma Anderson." She hesitated, gathering her thoughts before continuing. "My mother was a science fiction writer. In her final years, she devoted herself to a single story, her most important work. You already know some of her contributions. The interstellar sport that now unites the generational fleet, that was her idea, a concept designed to foster passion, connection, and motivation among our people as they drifted through the void." Ellie glanced down at the tablet she held, her fingers gripping its edges. "I don't know if you truly succeeded in making that sport a reality, but if you're watching this, it means that at least 2 generational ships have reached their destinations." Her expression darkened. "Unfortunately, it also means that at least 2 missions have ended in catastrophe." The weight of those words seemed to press down on her shoulders. "I made a promise to my mother, to decide when, or if, her work should be released. She was a woman of extraordinary imagination, but she was also a pessimist. Her stories, they never ended on a hopeful note. That's why, given the precarious situation of mankind when I recorded this message, I withheld her final work. I hoped it would never need to see the light of day." She swallowed hard, struggling to continue. "But the event she predicted has happened. Twice." Ellie closed her eyes briefly, as if trying to reject the reality of her own words. When she looked up again, her gaze was steady. "And she didn't stop at just 2 failures. My mother wrote scenarios where every generational spaceship's mission would end the same way. In her vision, humanity could not outrun its own destruction. She had no hope that we would survive ourselves." A heavy silence filled the room, where the 5 leaders of each ship watched, their own doubts and fears reflected in the screen before them. "But I refused to believe that." Ellie's voice hardened with resolve. "My mother was free to let her imagination take her wherever it led. But make no mistake, more than anything, she wanted humanity to succeed. She wanted to believe we could surpass our limits, to see us survive and thrive as a galactic civilization. But no matter how hard she tried, she could not envision a future where we overcame ourselves." Ellie took a slow breath, as if preparing to relinquish the last burden she had carried alone for so long. "That is why she entrusted me with her story, and now I am entrusting you with it." She leaned forward slightly, her expression fierce, determined. "You bear an unimaginable responsibility. I do not envy you, but I believe in you. I believe that every dark scenario my mother explored will serve as a warning, not a prophecy. You will learn from them. You will be prepared." A small, almost imperceptible smile flickered on her lips, though it did not reach her eyes. "Even in the darkest of times, I choose to believe in our future. Humanity will prevail if we stand together." With those final words, the screen went black. That's part 1 of chapter 19, Foreseen Panic, from a story called The Time-Dilated Generations by Esteban Gallardo. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again next time.